explore the deep-rooted and historic friendship between India and Iran that has spanned over 3,000 years. From ancient cultural exchanges and shared religious traditions to modern-day strategic partnerships, this video dives into the rich history of India-Iran relations. Discover how Indo-Iranian migrations shaped linguistic and cultural connections, the influence of the Achaemenid and Mughal empires, the spread of Persian art and architecture in India, and how modern-day collaborations, such as the Chabahar Port, continue to strengthen these historic ties. Join us on this comprehensive journey as we uncover the powerful cultural, economic, and geopolitical bonds that have connected these two great civilizations across centuries. Key topics covered: Indo-Iranian migration and shared heritage, influence of Persian culture on India during the Achaemenid Empire, Persian language, literature, and art in Mughal India, strategic modern-day partnerships like the Chabahar Port, India and Iran's energy cooperation and trade relations, and the significance of religious exchanges including Zoroastrianism and Sufism. Stay tuned for a detailed and insightful analysis of how the India-Iran relationship has evolved from ancient times to the modern era. Let's start today's analysis. Listen attentively. India-Iran, friendship from ancient times, a historical and cultural bond. The friendship between India and Iran is a deep-rooted, multifaceted relationship that has evolved over millennia. From the days of the Achaemenid Empire in Persia to the modern republics of Iran and India, this relationship has encompassed cultural exchanges, trade, diplomacy, religious influence, and political alliances. The ties between the two civilizations are among the oldest in human history, and their shared heritage continues to shape both nations. This exploration of the India-Iran friendship delves into the rich history of their connection, highlighting the many layers of interaction, from ancient times through medieval periods to contemporary geopolitics. Ancient ties shared civilization and cultural exchange, 5000 BCE, 500 CE. The history of India-Iran relations can be traced back to prehistoric times when Indo-Iranian tribes migrated and settled across a vast region stretching from the Iranian plateau to the Indian subcontinent. This ancient migration laid the foundation for a shared linguistic, cultural, and religious heritage between the two regions. Indo-Iranian migration and common heritage. Around 3000 to 1500 BCE, Indo-Iranian tribes, believed to have descended from a common ancestral group, began migrating across Central Asia. This migration led to the establishment of distinct civilizations in Persia, modern-day Iran, and India. These two groups spoke languages from the same family, the Indo-Iranian branch of the Indo-European language family. Sanskrit, the ancient language of India, and Avestan, the sacred language of Iran's Zoroastrians, share many similarities, reflecting this ancient connection. Linguistic connections. Sanskrit and Avestan have common vocabulary and grammatical structures. For instance, the word for mother in Sanskrit is matra, and in Avestan, it is matar. These similarities point to a shared linguistic ancestry that predates both modern India and Iran. Religious parallels. The ancient religious traditions of Vedic Hinduism in India and Zoroastrianism in Iran show intriguing similarities. Both traditions worshipped natural elements and revered fire as a sacred force. The concept of divine order or cosmic law, called Artha in Vedic literature and Asha in Zoroastrianism, further highlights the shared spiritual ideas. The Achaemenid Empire and its influence on India, 550 BCE, 330 BCE. The Achaemenid Empire, founded by Cyrus the Great in the 6th century BCE, marked the beginning of formal political relations between India and Iran. At its peak, the Achaemenid Empire stretched from the Mediterranean to the Indus Valley in northwestern India, encompassing parts of present-day Pakistan and Afghanistan. Cultural and administrative exchange. The Achaemenids introduced a sophisticated bureaucratic system that influenced the governance of their Indian provinces. Satraps, or regional governors, ruled over the Indian territories, and the local populations were integrated into the empire's trade networks. Gold and precious materials from India flowed into Persian capitals, while Persian architecture, art, and administrative practices found their way into Indian cities. Cyrus's diplomacy and Darius's conquest. While Cyrus is often credited with establishing relations with India through diplomacy, his successor, Darius I, launched a military campaign around 516 BCE that extended Persian control into the Indus Valley. Darius inscribed this conquest on the Behistun inscription, showing that Indian satraps paid tribute to the Achaemenid court. Alexander the Great and the Seleucid period, 330 BCE, 250 BCE. Following Alexander the Great's conquest of Persia in 330 BCE, the Seleucid Empire emerged as a successor state, which continued to maintain relations with India. The Seleucids exchanged ambassadors with the Mauryan Empire in India, most notably during the reign of Chandragupta Maurya. Cultural exchange. The Seleucids and Mauryans engaged in diplomatic marriages and traded war elephants, spices, and textiles. This era further cemented the cultural exchanges between India and Iran, with Persian influence seen in Indian art and architecture. Ashoka's missionary efforts. The Mauryan Emperor Ashoka, after converting to Buddhism, sent missionaries to spread the religion, including to regions within Iran. This helped to further religious and philosophical dialogue between the two regions. Medieval period Islamic influence and flourishing trade, 500 CE, 1500 CE. During the medieval period, the relationship between India and Iran entered a new phase, primarily driven by the spread of Islam and the rise of powerful empires in both regions. Persia, now under Islamic rule, became a center of learning, culture, and trade, influencing the Indian subcontinent. The Sasanian Empire and pre-Islamic relations, 224 CE, 651 CE. The Sasanian Empire, which ruled Persia until the Arab conquest, maintained a vibrant trading relationship with India. Sasanian coins have been found in Indian archaeological sites, indicating extensive trade in spices, textiles, and gems. Religious exchange. Zoroastrian communities, fleeing persecution following the Islamic conquest of Persia, found refuge in western India, particularly in Gujarat. These Zoroastrians, known as Parsis, became an integral part of Indian society and contributed to the subcontinent's cultural and economic life. Islamic conquest and the Delhi Sultanate, 11th century, 14th century. With the spread of Islam into India, Persian culture, language, and administrative practices began to exert significant influence on Indian politics and society. Persian became the language of administration and culture in many Indian courts, especially under the Delhi Sultanate. Sufi influence. Sufism, the mystical branch of Islam that developed in Persia, found fertile ground in India. Persian Sufi saints such as Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti played a key role in spreading Islamic teachings and fostering cultural syncretism between Indian and Persian traditions. Persian literature and art. Persian poets, scholars, and artists flocked to Indian courts, enriching Indian culture with Persian artistic and literary traditions. Persian remained the dominant language of courtly culture in India well into the Mughal period, with works like Amir Khusro's poetry blending Persian and Indian themes. The Mughal Empire and Persian dominance in Indian court culture, 16th century to 18th century. The Mughal Empire, founded by Babur in the early 16th century, was profoundly influenced by Persian culture. The Mughals, who claimed descent from the Timurids of Central Asia and had Persian ancestry, embraced Persian language, art, architecture, and administration. Language and literature. Persian became the official language of the Mughal court and was used for diplomacy, literature, and scholarship. The Mughal emperors, particularly Akbar, Shah Jahan, and Aurangzeb, patronized Persian poets, artists, and scholars, making the Mughal court one of the great centers of Persianate culture in the world. Architectural influence. Mughal architecture, with its use of grand domes, intricate tilework, and formal gardens, drew heavily from Persian styles. The Taj Mahal, India's most famous monument, is a blend of Persian and Indian architectural traditions, symbolizing the enduring cultural synthesis between the two civilizations. Trade and diplomacy. The Mughals maintained close diplomatic and trade relations with Safavid Persia. This relationship facilitated the exchange of luxury goods, including silk, spices, and precious stones, and led to the cross-fertilization of artistic and cultural ideas. Modern era, from colonialism to post-independence relations, 19th century, present. As the modern era dawned, the relationship between India and Iran was shaped by the pressures of colonialism, the rise of nationalism, and eventually the dynamics of the Cold War and post-colonial geopolitics. Colonial encounters and shared struggles, 19th century, early 20th century. During the 19th and early 20th centuries, both India and Iran faced increasing pressure from European colonial powers. The British Empire controlled India, while Russia and Britain vied for influence in Iran. Intellectual exchange. Despite these challenges, intellectuals and revolutionaries in both countries exchanged ideas about nationalism, anti-colonialism, and modernization. Iranian intellectuals like Jamal al-Din al-Afghani influenced Indian political thought, promoting ideas of Islamic unity and anti-imperialism. Parsis and economic ties. The Parsi community in India, originally from Iran, became instrumental in strengthening economic ties between British India and Iran, particularly in sectors like textiles, shipping, and finance. Post-independence relations, 1947, present. After gaining independence in 1947, India maintained a close relationship with Iran, which had become a constitutional monarchy under Reza Shah Pahlavi. The Cold War, however, complicated their relations, as India aligned with the Soviet Union, while Iran, under the Shah, was a key ally of the United States. Non-aligned movement. Despite these differences, India and Iran found common ground in the Non-Aligned Movement, NAM, which sought to chart a course independent of both the US and Soviet blocs. Iran under the Shah and India, under Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, were both founding members of the NAM. Energy and trade. In the post-independence period, energy trade became a cornerstone of India-Iran relations. Iran, with its vast reserves of oil and natural gas, emerged as a crucial energy supplier to India. This relationship deepened over time, especially after India's rapid economic growth in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, which increased its demand for energy. The Islamic Revolution and shifting alliances, 1979, 1990s. The 1979 Islamic Revolution in Iran, which toppled the Shah and established a theocratic regime, dramatically altered the geopolitical landscape of the region. India, which had maintained cordial relations with the Shah, had to recalibrate its approach to Iran, now governed by Ayatollah Khomeini's Islamic Republic. Strategic and economic interests. Despite Iran's shift toward a more Islamic-oriented foreign policy, economic pragmatism continued to guide the relationship. India remained interested in Iranian oil and natural gas, while Iran valued India as a significant customer for its energy exports. During the Iran-Iraq War, 1981-1988, India maintained a neutral stance, ensuring that its economic ties with both Iran and Iraq remained intact. Iran's isolation and India's role. After the revolution, Iran faced increasing isolation, particularly from the West, due to its anti-American stance and its backing of Islamist movements in the region. This isolation led Iran to seek closer relations with non-Western powers, including India, as it sought partners to break out of its diplomatic and economic encirclement. Post-Cold War era. New economic partnerships and strategic interests, 1990s, present. the end of the Cold War brought a new era in India-Iran relations, marked by increased economic engagement and strategic cooperation. Both countries, now no longer aligned with competing superpowers, sought to expand their ties in areas of mutual interest. Energy cooperation. As India's economy surged in the 1990s and early 2000s, its demand for energy skyrocketed, and Iran's vast oil and natural gas reserves became critical to meeting this demand. India has invested in Iranian oil fields and sought to secure a stable supply of energy, while Iran has looked to India as a reliable market for its exports. The Chabahar Port project. One of the most significant projects that has come to symbolize the modern India-Iran partnership is the development of the Chabahar Port in southeastern Iran. This port is crucial for India's strategic interests as it provides an alternative route for trade with Afghanistan and Central Asia, bypassing Pakistan. The Chabahar Port also serves as a counter to China's involvement in Pakistan's Gwadar port under the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor (CPEC) initiative, thus enhancing India's strategic foothold in the region. Connectivity to Central Asia. Through Chabahar, India and Iran have been working to develop the International North-South Transport Corridor (INSTC), which is aimed at facilitating trade between India, Iran, Russia and Central Asia. This corridor reduces transportation time and costs, making it a vital element of regional integration and economic cooperation. Geopolitical challenges and cooperation in the 21st century. While the India-Iran partnership has flourished, it has not been without its challenges, particularly due to the complex geopolitical environment of the 21st century. US-Iran tensions. One of the most significant factors affecting India-Iran relations has been the long-standing tensions between Iran and the United States, particularly after the imposition of sanctions on Iran following its nuclear program. India, which maintains strategic relations with the US, has had to navigate these tensions carefully. While India has often complied with US sanctions, it has sought waivers to continue importing Iranian oil, given its energy dependence on Iran. Iran's role in regional stability. Iran's involvement in regional conflicts, particularly in Syria and Iraq, as well as its support for groups like Hezbollah, has complicated its relations with the West. India, with its focus on maintaining regional stability, has balanced its ties with Iran by emphasizing economic cooperation while steering clear of the more contentious political aspects of Iranian foreign policy. India's relations with Israel and Saudi Arabia. India has developed close ties with both Israel and Saudi Arabia, two countries that view Iran as a rival. Balancing these relationships while maintaining a robust partnership with Iran has been a delicate diplomatic task for India, as it seeks to secure its interests in a complex and often polarized region. Cultural and people-to-people ties. Beyond politics and economics, the India-Iran relationship is deeply rooted in cultural and people-to-people exchanges that have spanned centuries. Cultural syncretism. The Persian influence on Indian art, architecture and literature is perhaps most visible in the Mughal period, but it extends far beyond that era. Persian language and culture have shaped India's literary traditions, with poets like Rumi and Hafiz enjoying a lasting legacy in Indian culture. Indian rulers, particularly the Mughals, were great patrons of Persian literature, and Persian became the language of administration and high culture in many parts of India. Literature and poetry. Persian poetry, especially the works of Rumi, Sadi, and Hafiz, has been a source of inspiration for Indian poets. The tradition of ghazal singing in India, for example, has deep roots in Persian literary culture. Indian poets like Mirza Ghalib drew heavily on Persian poetic forms, creating a blend of Indian and Persian styles that still resonates in the subcontinent's literary world. Art and architecture. The Persian influence on Indian art is most evident in the grand Mughal architecture of the 16th and 17th centuries, but it also appears in earlier periods. Persian motifs, designs, and craftsmanship have been integrated into Indian artistic traditions, from miniature paintings to textiles and crafts. Religious exchange. Religion has also been a significant element of India-Iran ties, with Zoroastrianism and Islam playing prominent roles. Parsi community. The Parsi community in India, descendants of Zoroastrians who fled Iran to escape religious persecution in the 7th century, have made significant contributions to Indian society. They are renowned for their achievements in industry, philanthropy, and the arts, and they maintain strong cultural ties to Iran, even as they have become fully integrated into Indian society. Sufism and Islamic mysticism. Sufism, with its origins in Persia, has had a profound impact on Indian spiritual traditions. The Chishti order, one of the most prominent Sufi orders in India, was heavily influenced by Persian mysticism, and its teachings fostered a culture of tolerance and religious pluralism that became a hallmark of Indian Islam. Conclusion: a timeless friendship. The friendship between India and Iran is one of the oldest and most enduring in world history. It has been shaped by millennia of shared culture, trade, and intellectual exchange, surviving the rise and fall of empires and the shifting sands of geopolitics. While the relationship has faced challenges, particularly in the modern era with the rise of global and regional rivalries, the deep-rooted historical and cultural ties between the two nations have ensured that their bond remains strong. In the 21st century, India and Iran continue to explore new avenues of cooperation, particularly in trade, energy, and regional security. As both nations look to the future, their historical friendship serves as a foundation upon which they can build a more prosperous and peaceful relationship, one that benefits not only their own citizens, but also the broader region. This timeless friendship, with its blend of ancient connections and modern cooperation, remains a testament to the enduring power of cultural exchange and diplomacy in shaping the destiny of nations.